Archimedes principle. What is Archimedes principle? What is the mechanism of Archimedes principle? Today I will discuss all about it in this video. Okay. Imagine you are standing near a river holding a stone in your hand. When you drop the stone into the water, it sinks immediately. Have you ever experienced this? Let me know in the comment section, please. But nearby, you see a huge ship floating calmly on the same water. Why does it happen so? This makes us curious. Why does a small stone sink but a massive ship floats? You want to know, na? To understand this, we need to look inside the fluid itself. First, remember one important fact about fluid, that pressure in a fluid increases with the depth. Okay, so as we go deep down in the water, the pressure will become higher at the bottom of the water, but at the top of the water, that is, pressure is lower in comparison to the bottom of the water. Okay, this means that as you go deeper into the water, the more pressure the water applies. As you go deeper in the water applies more pressure in comparison to the top. That means at the bottom there is pressure higher, but at the top pressure is lower. Okay, now just imagine a solid object. This is a solid object inside water. The water pushes the object from all of the sides. Okay, all of the sides. However, the pressure on the bottom of the object is greater. Okay, object experienced more force at the bottom in comparison to the top. Okay, because of the pressure difference at top and bottom, a stronger upward force acts on the bottom of the object and the weaker force acts on the top of the object. This net upward force acting on the object is called as buoyant force. What does it called as? Buoyant force. This net upward force is called as buoyant force. Because of this force, object sinks, float, or submerged into the water. Okay, as the object enters the water, it pushes some water out of its way. Okay, as the object enters as the object enters the water in this tank, as this object enters in this tank, it pushes some water out of its way. Okay, that is called as displaced fluid. The water that is pushed out of the tank, that is called as displaced fluid. Okay, so if the buoyant force, the force that is acting at the bottom of the object in upward direction, that is buoyant force, if this is greater than the weight of object, that means it rises. Okay, but if both the forces are equal, that means it floats. If buoyant force is lesser than the weight of object, that means the object will sink in the water. This happens because of pressure difference. As you can see here, this block is not totally submerged or sink in the water. It rises upward direction because the buoyant force is greater than the weight of this object. But in case of this, here the buoyant force is equals to the weight of object. That is why it floats on the water. But in case of this diagram, you can see weight of the object is greater than the upthrust force. This upward force that is called as buoyant force is also known as upthrust. This is lesser than the weight of the object. That is why it sinks in the water. So if the buoyant force is greater than the weight of the object rises and floats. If the buoyant force is equal to the weight of the object floats in equilibrium. If the buoyant force is less than the weight of the object sinks. This is why a ship floats. Although it is heavy, it displaces a large volume of water, producing a large buoyant force. That means large volume of water means larger the buoyant force. Okay. A stone, on the other hand, displaces very little water, so the buoyant force is small and it sinks. Thus, floating and sinking are not determined by weight alone, but by the pressure difference in the fluids and the buoyant force produced. This complete explanation is known as Archimedes' principles. Thank you.